If you played RuneScape in the earlier mid-2000s, then surely you'll know the name Zezima. He was probably on your friend list, maybe you found him in-game, maybe you followed him around begging for gold, or asking him to add you back. Whatever the case may be, back then, the man was a legend. Let me take you back to 2001. At this point, Zezima had yet to start his journey to greatness. One of his friends sends him a message telling him that he knows of a game that Zezima would never be any good at. The game was RuneScape. Fast forward a year later, and Zezima had achieved his first 99, smithing. Now, like me, many of you guys probably had not played RuneScape Classic, but this was a monumental thing back then. He had to source all his materials himself through mining or trading, as of course there was no GE. Most annoyingly, there was a fatigue system in place. Every bar he smelted and piece of armor that he smithed would increase his fatigue, with rune gear increasing your fatigue by over 1% per bar used. Once you hit 100% fatigue, you would stop gaining XP and you would have to go sleep and then type in a CAPTCHA to resume playing. As annoying as it already sounds to go to sleep every few inventories, it got worse. Since sleeping bags had not yet been released in 2002, you would actually have to go find an inn to sleep in. But Zezima had the dedication and he powered through. His next 99s were cooking and fishing, which also were not easy tasks back then. You had to click the fishing spot every time you wanted to catch a single fish and do the same for cooking them. It was probably comparable in quality of life to click-intensive methods like mining iron in today's game. By late 2003, Zezima had achieved the top position on the high scores, and this was before he had even maxed fishing, so he held this position with only 2 99s. Presumably his other stats were pretty solid, but it's insane to think that 99s were just that rare back then. Obviously the game knowledge was just not there, and RuneScape Classic was simply not a game that was meant to be maxed in any reasonable amount of time. Zezima would lose his rank 1 but quickly regain it shortly after the release of RuneScape 2. He would be the first player to achieve 99 Slayer in 2005, and was also the first player to reach 1980 total level, which was maxed back then. This was about 6 months after the release of Slayer, which I would say is pretty impressive considering it took me longer to max Slayer in OSRS, over 15 years later. Obviously I wasn't being efficient, but then again the amount of gear and resources we have access to today as compared to then is absolutely insane. He followed this up by maxing farming and achieving 2079 total level, maxing yet again. At this point, he was very well known throughout the community. If you asked anyone back then who the best player in the game was, Zezima's name would always be in the conversation. Whenever he even logged in, he would be followed by a swarm of hundreds of players trying to get his attention. He was really an in-game celebrity like we've never seen before and will probably never see again. Nowadays, most of the well-known players are streamers or YouTubers, and they don't have the mystery attached to them that Zezima had. No one knew who this guy was, they just knew that he had played this game for the majority of every waking hour of his life since it came out. At this point, rumors were flying all over the place. Some people thought that his account was played by a team of 12 different people, others accused him of botting, the list goes on. There was even a conspiracy that the account was operated by Jagex to give players a hero to look up to, so that they would continue grinding and become more addicted to the game. I found a wiki fanfiction type post from years ago detailing this conspiracy. It's an unbelievably stupid theory, but basically they said that Jagex decided to kill off Zezima and make another high level player, Gert Jars, the top of the high scores in 2008, and they did this because they wanted to promote Zezima as the #1 player on FunOrb, a now defunct website where Jagex hosted other games, and the part about Zezima being #1 on FunOrb is true, he actually was, but why Jagex would want to pull his name off of the RuneScape high scores and send it to FunOrb is beyond me. Why not just have him be at the top of both if they controlled his account anyway? I guess if this theory were true, maybe Jagex would just be thinking that no one could possibly be at the top of both of those high score lists at the same time. The poster also brings up that Jagex had a YouTube channel that had only one friend, which was Zezima's official channel, Zezima0213. As a side note, I guess you used to be able to add friends on YouTube, but I don't personally remember this feature. Anyway, he questions how they could possibly know that that was really his channel unless they were behind Zezima all along. Obviously the post is full of holes and it doesn't make much sense at all. Most likely the guy who wrote it didn't believe it either, as it is fanfiction, but I did enjoy reading it because it reminded me of things that I would read online back in the day, weird conspiracies thought up by 14-year-olds that I might have actually believed when I was that age. It was in 2007 when Zezima became the first player to reach 1 billion XP, but there was a problem. This was still nowhere near the XP cap, and new skills were still releasing left and right. In 2008, when Summoning was released, Zezima would finally lose his spot atop the high score list, as he stated at this point that he had stopped playing the game competitively. And who could blame him? He had been outgrinding the entire RuneScape community for over 3 years straight. Zezima lived and breathed RuneScape. He got married in RuneScape, who knows if that lasted, but in those days, no one's RSGF was safe. If Zezima logged in next to her, it was game over. No king can rule forever. So what has Zezima been up to lately? Well, he still goes hard in RuneScape 3. It seems he didn't want to transition to OSRS when it came out due to how much time he had already put into his account. When Divination released in RS3, he was the 18th player to hit 99, and he has won 12 seasonal high scores competitions, proving that he still has that dog in him when it comes to grinding. He achieved 200 mil XP in all skills by 2016, and he has nearly max XP to this day. He currently sits at around rank 30,000 on the RS3 high scores, which is a far cry from the top position he held for 3 years, but no matter what he does from this point onward, he will most likely always be the most famous person in any iteration of RuneScape. In a 2017 documentary on the official RuneScape channel, an interview with Zezima himself is showcased. He turned out to be a seemingly pretty normal dude, and it put to bed most of the conspiracies about his account. He did mention that early in his RuneScape career, he was playing over 10 hours a day for a period of about 6 years, but I would have thought that he'd have to be playing closer to 16 hours a day. Maybe he was understating it, maybe the competition really wasn't that fierce back then, who knows. The entire vibe of the game was just completely different when the majority of players were kids that were in school and probably had limited time to game. Back then, the biggest brick wall holding you back from progressing your account was your parents kicking you off of the computer. Just the fact of having unlimited time to play RuneScape would put you ahead of the vast majority of the player base, regardless of your skill level. Nowadays, your average high-level player probably puts in 10 hours a day, and it's really not going to put you that far ahead of the curve. At the end of the day, Zezima was not someone who was known for his skills in PVM or PKing like most of the prominent players in today's game. In fact, a lot of that high-level content didn't even exist when he was at the top. This was a man who became a legend the old-fashioned way, by playing the game more than anyone else, and that is what RuneScape was all about. Thank you for watching.